Hey, it's Clay. Welcome to another League of Legends video. This is going to be a first impressions on Yasuo, the Unforgiven. He is the newest champion to enter the League of Legends as of December 13, I believe was his release day. But this is not going to be a why buy. I'm going to save that till a later time. Champions have a tendency to be a little bit misunderstood, or I guess, yeah, like in terms of like build optimization or lane matchups or things like that. You know, none of that is really set in stone, and things tend to change. You know, if you look at a champion like Lucian, a lot of people thought he was very, very weak upon release. They did some minor tweaks to his kit, but for the most part, like, his kit has stayed pretty much the same, and actually he just got a recent nerf in 3.15, so I think that just goes to show you that a lot of times the general community doesn't fully understand a champion right when they are released. It takes a little bit of time for the dust to settle, so to speak. But I still do think that a first impressions is something, you know, because obviously people want to talk about the champion. I want to talk about him because I think he's pretty fun and interesting. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to kind of do this similarly to a why buy in terms of like talking about his all of his different parts of his kit, including his skills and abilities, his his itemization, all those different little things, which I think are kind of pertinent. But so anyways, let's start off with his skills and abilities, or let's kind of talk about him from a macro perspective. So overall, he definitely is more of a melee carry. So if similar to, I believe the four mainstay melee carries are Tryndamere, Master Yi, Fiora, and Gangplank. Champions who rely on their melees, but they want to build like a carry style build, like a melee, like a ranged AD carry would build in the bot lane. So this would include items like, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Static Shiv, Last Whisper, Bloodthirster, all these big ticket damage items where they're kind of going glass cannon. And specifically for the melee carries, they have to have something in their kit that kind of allows them to survive when they're melee. So like with Tryndamere, he's got his ultimate, which gives him the cheese where he can't die. With Master Yi, he's got his super hyperspeed on his ultimate, and he's also got his W, which can kind of like heal him and give him a little bit of time to like wait for his cooldowns. He also kind of has like the reset thing going on, so Master Yi is a little bit more like towards the assassin end of the spectrum, where he wants to come in and blow somebody up in a couple seconds and then get out. Fiora has her, she's got a double gap closer, and she's got a huge steroid, and then she's got her ultimate, which also makes her untargetable, so when the fight goes down and it gets crazy, she can pop her ultimate and get a nice bit of damage off on everyone. And then Gangplank has his cleanse on his W, and then he also has his parley, which helps him to be ranged in certain instances, and then he's got a really nice steroid as well. So yeah, melee carries tend to be kind of tricky champions to play, and so getting a first blood right there on Renekton, doing some nice trading with him. So melee carries tend to be tricky champions to play, and for the most part, I think they're a little bit difficult to balance, because it's like if they're strong or if they're, quote unquote viable, it's often difficult to deal with them because they're ranged. Ooh, and it looks like Vi is coming in for a bit of a dive, but I am not scared, and I'm going to pick up a kill there actually with an auto attack, a Q, and an E. She got one a little too ham on me. Melee carries are tricky because because they're melee, they have to get in close, and they have to, obviously when you're melee, you are in much greater danger because you have to actually get into the mix, physically with your person. Whereas when you're ranged, you can usually keep yourself, back in a harm's way, and you can just rely on good positioning to keep yourself alive. Well, with melee carries, you can't really do that. So, definitely something to keep in mind when you're playing somebody like this Yasuo is that it's always going to be a little bit tricky to kind of get a hang or a feel for like the balance between survivability and damage and things like that. But anyways, with Yasuo, his thing is he's got a couple of different things. He's got, first of all, his wind wall is kind of the big obvious one, where he can block projectiles. There are a lot of really cool, interesting uses for that, where for the most part, like especially during a team fight, I think the intended use is that you can like kind of split the team in half and use it as to something to I get the knock-up and going in for my ultimate. Unfortunately going to take a tower shot or two, but so you can use your wind wall to kind of split the team in half in terms of who can actually damage you. So like the backline can't really touch you because they can't get anything through your wind wall, whereas you can only deal with the front line, and actually Yasuo is really good against tanks. So, and then he also has his passive, which gives him a shield. That's more kind of in for lane, I would say, as it helps him with his trading in lane. But it does give him some survivability, and then he's also got a ton of mobility with his E. He can dash all over the place and be very slippery, and mobility is always strong. If you look at a champion like Ezreal, you know, Ezreal has proven himself to be a very strong, reliable, viable champion at all levels of play, just because he's got so much mobility that it really makes it difficult for people to deal with him, just because he's so slippery. And so Yasuo kind of fits in a similar vein, where he's got great mobility. And that is kind of another thing that is going to help him to stay alive. So all that said, let's look specifically at his abilities. I'm just going to kind of give like a first impressions on how each ability feels. So first up, his passive. I'm going to talk about the passive component, which gives him the double crit. This is really the core of his damage. I would say that like pretty much all of his damage is going to be coming from crit. And if you do like a normal build with like a Static Shiv and Infinity Edge, you're going to be nearing 100% crit, which is pretty crazy. So, and that's how they balance his kit. There's a nice knock-up and ultimate, going to finish off that Renekton. But pretty much all of his damage is focused on getting crits, and that's how he's balanced, because his abilities have extremely low base damage, and so he relies on crit from his passive to deal damage. So his crit is really important, and I would say that it's going to be difficult to like function with on Yasuo without really itemizing for crit, just because he doesn't have the damage to back it up. But then his resolve is kind of his shield thing. So as he's moving, he gains stacks of his flow, which is his secondary resource here. And then when it reaches max level, if he takes damage, then he converts it into a shield. So yeah, so that this really helps him out in lane. It helps him with his trading. It also incentivizes you to be moving around constantly. You never really want to be standing still on Yasuo, just because you always want to be moving and trying to maximizing this shield potential. I think this is good. I think that his laning is weak, so having the shield is really nice to help him out there. And then obviously the crit, like I said, is the majority of his damage. So I actually think his passive is one of his like core elements, and it's strong. I think that it's a core part of his kit that is strong. Next up would be his Q, Steel Tempest. This is like a very short-ranged on-hit. It's kind of like a Gangplank Q, but with shorter range, and it will actually affect targets in an AoE. This is a really unique skill that I have never really seen anything quite like it before. But he thrusts his sword forward. It has very, very low base damage. At max rank, the base damage is only 100. I would say normally base damage is somewhere in the ballpark of like, I don't know, 200 to 300 is like a something like 240 is like a very standard level of base damage on an ability. But with Yasuo, he has 100 base damage, but then it scales with 100% of his attack damage, and it will apply on hit effects, including crit, or lifesteal, or Blade of the Rune King, or Static Shiv, anything like that. This is really, I would say, his like a very core part of his kit. I've been maxing this ability first, and I think that's probably the way to go. Now, it has a 3-part ability where if you use it, you have to use it on an opponent, or on an enemy minion or enemy champion. Use it once, it does its normal damage. Use it second time, it does the normal effect as well. But then the third time, right there, I actually used, it does a little knock-up. And Yasuo will kind of like, you can hear there's like a wind sound going around him, and you can see like little wind particles swirling around him. That means that his third cast of his Steel Tempest is ready. And the knock-up has double the range. So the standard range is very short, it's like 475, but the knock-up has 900 range, which is very, very long. There's the knock-up again. Getting a nice ultimate off. Oh, taking a lot of turret shots, though, unfortunately. I think I'm going to I'm going to flash away and get out safely. So the third cast has much longer range. And another really interesting thing about this is that it has a max rank of 4-second cooldown, but the cooldown doesn't actually scale with cooldown reduction. It scales with attack speed. So the more attack speed you buy, actually the faster, or the more quickly it will come up. So it can actually, with like a ton of attack speed, you can actually get it down to like a 1.3 second cooldown, which is pretty sweet. And so I would say that attack speed is very much a core stat on Yasuo, because you need to be getting that knock-up as often as you possibly can, because that's the only way you can self-proc your ultimate. So getting attack speed is really important on Yasuo, and it's definitely something that I would definitely recommend, is because you want to really maximize your Q. So yeah, overall a pretty strong ability. You want to be using this to try to poke in lane and just kind of continually getting those 3 charges up and trying to get the knock up, and then you're trying to trade when they're knocked up. Because like really the best time to trade is a real combination of things. Number one, when your passive is up, so you have your shield. Number 2 is when you have 3 stacks on your Q. And then also when you have multiple stacks on your E. Those are kind of, that's like the magic situation where you really want to trade with Yasuo. So yeah, overall, you know, this is very much just, you know, this is his kit. You know, a lot of his damage comes from his Q, and managing the stacks is really important. Now, I did have a harder time kind of doing this, especially when I was learning him. I had a harder time managing, you know, when I had my knockup ready, but then I started really listening. So like right now I've got the little, there, you could see like I released the wind. It was kind of like surrounding me, and then I threw out my wind wall, or not the wind wall, the knockup. And so really keeping track of when that's available and knowing when you can get the knockup is really important on Yasuo. So right there, you can see how I'm like swirling with blue. That means it's ready to go, so keep that in mind. Next up would be his W wind wall. I accidentally put a second point in this. This is really his 1-point skill. But passively, it gives you extra, you know, it helps you stack your flow faster. Not a huge deal. But then actively, you'll lay down a wind wall, which kind of reminds me of like a Karthus W, where like you put down this like wall. But instead of slowing your opponents, they actually block all incoming projectiles. So any sort of like ranged attacks, there are some things that won't work on, but for the most part, any sort of like ranged projectile attack will work. And so it really, this is a really cool part of his kit. You can do some really cool outplay moments. Getting the knockup in my ultimate. Now, in an earlier game, I was playing actually against Diana. Gonna go all in here on this Renekton, I believe. The wind wall there was probably redundant because I don't think it does anything against Renekton, but anyway, like I said, in an earlier game I was playing against Diana, and whenever she would try and Q me, if I had good reaction time, I could get the wind wall down and block it, and then I would try to go in and trade with her, because if she doesn't land the Q, then she doesn't have the extra stack of her ultimate, and that's usually what she's maxing first, so like that really like cripples her damage output, and I was really able to get a lot of successful trades off by blocking her Q with her with his wind wall. And so, you know, when you're playing against ranged champions in particular, especially in the mid lane with mages who have these like kind of easily casted spells, you can usually block them, and it's really a cool mechanic. It's something that's very fun to use when you pull it off correctly. It's very rewarding, and it really helps you survive in team fights. Like I said, is you want to put down a good wind wall to try and kind of shield off half of their team, so you can kind of deal with one half of their team and not all of them. Keep yourself safe. Very high skill ceiling. There are definitely times when I like totally derp on my wind wall and just kind of fail and panic and put it down and it doesn't do anything. So definitely a very high skill cap move, but still a very strong move, I would say, and something that's very fun to use. Next up would be his E, Sweeping Blade. With his Q, his Sweeping Blade, his E, those are like his core damaging abilities, where his W is his like utility ability. Didn't get the knock up there. So with his E, this is a really interesting ability. It's a short range dash, but it will you can actually dash. It has like a split second cooldown between a half second and 0.1 second. Going in again on Renekton. Feeling pretty confident. See if I can dive through here with some stacks on my E. Yep, there we go. Gonna finish off that kill very easily. But so your E has like a 0.1, like a split second cooldown. But the thing is that when you E to a target, you mark them, and then you cannot dash to them again for 10 down to 6 seconds at max rank. But then it incentivizes you to like kind of continually be dashing around, because the damage actually amps up the more times that you dash. So, for example, like it's kind of like Vladimir's E, where you can charge it up to 4 stacks. I believe this has 5 stacks. Let me double check. Yeah, so four stacks, so 25% each time. You definitely want to be trying to do that whenever you want to go and trade with someone. You want to kind of E to a couple of different minions to stack up your damage and then go ham on them. And it's really kind of an interesting ability. It gives you a ton of mobility and maneuverability, makes you very like slippery in lane. And it's also like just kind of really fun to use when you're just kind of darting in around all the creeps and doing all these crazy things. Very fun to use. But overall, the damage is fairly low. It only scales off of ability power, not AD, which is kind of weird. I kind of thought that Riot was trying to do away with some of that, because like they get in trouble with some of their champions by having these like split, scalings. But on Yasuo, for some reason, they gave him an AP ratio. So I'm guessing that this is more about the mobility than it is about the damage. Although at max rank, the damage is actually not bad, with 300 base damage there. Now I'm going to go in on Renekton, just again using my E. And another thing about this is it's kind of like Fizz's Q, where it will dash a fixed distance every time. So even if you're dashing to someone who's like right next to you, you will still go through them. So you could use this to like, if I like dashed through the white, I would go over the wall. Or so you can use it kind of in tricky ways, where sometimes it's actually to your benefit to dash through a nearby minion to get close to your opponent, and then use the dash to them as like a secondary gap closer. But overall, pretty fun ability to use, and it just, makes him really fun and interesting. And you can combine your E and Q together, where if you E in and then Q during your E animation, you actually will sweep around in a circle and do AoE damage, so that's kind of a cool trick to keep in mind. Those abilities work well together. And then lastly would be his ultimate, Last Breath. This is a targeted ability. It will only apply to champions who are airborne, so I believe a knock up or a knock back is the only ones that will work. And then you can do it. So it's kind of a strange ability where you technically, even if it's off cooldown, you can't always use it when you want to because you need them to be knocked up. You can knock them up yourself with a third stack of your Q, but see, like right there, I missed it, so then I can't ult Renekton, even though I kind of wanted to. So anyways, it just is a little bit interesting. Personally, I actually think this is part of Yasuo's kit. Oh, and also, like I said, that it will give you armor penetration for 15 seconds after you use it, which is actually really powerful. So you definitely want to use this like early on in a team fight whenever somebody gets knocked up, because it will do a lot of damage to them, and be really... You want to get that armor pen throughout the fight. I actually am end up going down here. I kind of want to just test out my damage and see how well I could do, but I did end up dying, so that's a little unfortunate. But so yeah, his ultimate is... It's definitely a more difficult ultimate to use. It's very, very unreliable. It's very difficult to use when you want it. You know, like there are a lot of times when you want to ult and you want to make something happen, but you just can't because they're not knocked up. And so it's a little bit tricky in that regard. It gives Yasuo some really powerful and interesting synergy with certain champions, like Blitzcrank is a really good one, Vi is a really good one, because they have these abilities that can knock people up. You know, Vi with her ultimate or Q, Blitzcrank with his E, or even maybe his pull too. So you want to really try and pick Yasuo into teams that already also have knockups. You know, being the only knockup on your team is going to be really, really difficult, because it is tricky to manage his Q stacks, and especially in like a very like hectic team fight environment, it just is a difficult proposition. So. So those are his abilities. Then I had the most success maxing Q and really trying to focus on continually charging up my Q and trying to get the knock-up. And then whenever I get the knock-up to try and use it on my opponent, on this Renekton, I pretty much used the knock-up on him whenever I could. And then I also would try to follow it up with my ultimate whenever I could. Because one thing that I found is, like with a lot of ultimates, usually you want to try and, like, you know, save them for the right moment and kind of use them more opportunistically. Whereas I feel like with Yasuo, because it has this knockup mechanic and it's a little bit unreliable, I found that I pretty much would use it almost on cooldown whenever I could get a successful knockup with my Q. So, and that, I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but that's just kind of how I was doing it, and I had the most success. And I definitely feel like you could potentially go a whole game where you never really get to use your ultimate in the situation where you would want it, and that can be kind of frustrating. So I tended to just kind of use it whenever it was up and whenever I got the knockup, even if it wasn't like the most ideal situation, just because I wanted to use it and I wanted to try and, even if I'm using it to like harass like a Katarina ultimate, I feel like that was better than not using it at all. So just kind of my thoughts on it there. And so yeah, one of the things too that I felt about Yasuo is he feels like he's very Snowball. You can see if you look at my score, I'm 6-1-0, and I'm way ahead of this Renekton. Like double his CS, double, like, you know, our kill death score is almost polar opposite. And so I feel as if, you know, he snowballs very, very hard because his abilities have such low base damage. You know, if he doesn't get items, he's going to be very, very useless. But then in the same moment, if he does get items, he can be really, really strong. So I think overall, you know, he's kind of a very feast or famine champion, and definitely one who you need to kind of make your way through the early game and get to a point where you have items and are able to impact team fights. He's definitely a champion who scales extremely hard into late game. specifically because of his crit mechanic. If you can near, like, right now I think I've got like 90-some% crit, 92% crit chance. Like, that's absurd. Critting pretty much every auto attack is pretty nuts. So doing almost 500 damage per auto attack is pretty crazy. And it actually right here, Vi pinged like she wanted to go in, but then she just kind of didn't. And, well, now I'm in trouble. And so I think, yeah, this isn't going to go very well. I'm just going to end up dying. So I kind of got baited there by my own Vi. She pinged like she wanted to go in, but then she didn't, and we didn't have Kennen, so maybe that was the right call, but I don't know, it's kind of a little bit like, what are you going to do? If you want to go in, then go in. It's like, make a call, make a call. Don't say you want to go in and then don't. That's kind of what I was thinking there. But, so anyway, we kind of get wrecked right there. I think we got 1 kill, and we lost 3, unfortunately. Ooh, looks like Kennen wants to go super ham. It also looks like Teemo is trying to do work on Yasuo, but oh my gosh, he's so low. I think the shield from his mom Mortis saved his life right there. So, yeah, not a very good trade right there for us at all. We got aced, and they still have 3 up, although they're all very low. So, let's talk a little bit about itemization. I definitely think Static Shiv is like the core item on Yasuo. It just is. It does so many good things for him. The attack speed is great because it lowers the cooldown on his Q, and obviously auto attack. Like, he's very auto attack reliant, so getting attack speed is just really good. The crit chance is really nice, so getting 20% crit actually is 40% crit on Yasuo, so 40% crit is really, really good. And that is, like, so critical chance is a weird stat where, like, if you have, like, 10% crit, it's pretty worthless. But if you once you get, like, near the 50%-ish crit range, then it becomes worthwhile. And here, check out this burst combo. I land with the knockup, ignite, ultimate, and get a couple of E's and Q's, and I'm able to pick up that kill. So I'm pretty much, like, one-shot that guy with my combo. Now going on Renekton, using my knockup right there on Renekton and Shaco. Now moving, you can use my wind wall right there to block and give myself time to go in onto Lucian and able to give myself a triple kill, which was really cool. Up to 9-2-2, feeling really strong. Let's actually watch this team fight one more time. Okay, so I started off by catching out Yasuo. We saw him on the ward. Okay, so yeah, we see Yasuo coming in on the right. You can see I've got the swirling around me, so I know my knockup on my Q is ready, and I'm looking for an opportunity to use it. There I get the knockup, and I'm going to lead right into my ultimate, so I get the bonus armor pen. Going to ignite him, going to Q him, auto attack, and then I believe, yep, one more auto attack is going to finish him off. So pretty much one-shot him with my combo. Now just kind of waiting in the wings. I don't want to dive right into the middle of the team. Now I'm going on Renekton because he's the safest target. And I can get him. I'm critting pretty much every auto attack right now. There's a really nice double knockup. Gonna finish off Renekton and Shaco with some auto attacks. Now it looks like Vi's going in. I get knocked aside. Now I believe I used my wind wall here to try, so we could focus on Vi, and then moving on to Lucian. Gonna block off a significant part of his damage. I missed my knockup right there, unfortunately, but look at those crits. Those crits were pretty nuts. Does that say 1343? That's pretty absurd. Critting for almost 1400 damage. Yikes. Good luck with that enemy team. So a good team fight for us. Very, very much a good team fight for us. And I think that, yeah, definitely shows you, like, Yasuo can be really, really good in that regard, where you're just kind of, specifically, like, waiting in the wings a little bit, and then, going on Renekton, and not trying to dive right in the middle, but staying on the fringes and trying to DPS down whoever you can from safety is probably the best bet. Because he does have a lot of damage. Oh, it looks like we are going to overstay a little bit here, and I think Teemo is getting wrecked. I am going to go in on Shaco. I thought I could get him, but I actually could not, and now I'm dead. So that was a mistake, but that's okay. But anyways, I want to get back to the itemization I was talking about. I think Static Shiv is like the perfect item for him. Everything he wants, and also the move speed, 6% move speed, is really, really good. And then the static proc it also synergizes really well with his flow, because you want to be moving to generate flow, but you also want to be moving to generate the Shiv proc. So it's kind of like you get, movement is doubly good for you. And then also the crit from the charge, the lightning charge is also doubled because of your crit chance. So overall, Static Shiv is like the perfect item for Yasuo, and that was the item I think I went for second. The first time I went for was Lifesteal. I think I don't remember if I just got a Vamp Scepter, if I just sat on the Vamp Scepter, or if I get finished off the Bilgewater. Bilgewater, I think, is a nice place to kind of stop. Not go all the way to the Blade of the Rune King, just because it gives you, a good amount of lifesteal, a good amount of AD, but then it also gives you the active, which will give you the slow, and I think that's really nice on Yasuo, because it helps you to stick on your targets really nicely. And this is something like a build I would do on Tryndamere a lot, so I think it makes a lot of sense. So here's another team fight coming in. Going to go on to, again, going on Renekton, not diving right into the middle of the enemy team, trying to stay back and act like an AD carry, because I'm an AD carry, really, and not a tank. Using my E, actually, to dash away from the enemy team, so I was using my E right there to kite backwards. And now probably going to be kiting back with my Q. I do get ulted by the enemy Yasuo. But again, using my E to kite backwards, and they're getting a nice auto attack, and now I'm just critting really hard, critting for almost 1,500 damage. There's a nice EQ, and getting a triple kill. Can I get the quad? There's a crit for 1,200. Yes, I can get the quad, so a really nice series right there. Again, let's watch this team fight one more time to really get a feel for what's going on. Because, like I said, the big thing that I was really trying to work on here was to try and use my E to kite backwards. So like I said, using my E to kite away from my opponents. So trying to, again, stay in the back, focusing on Renekton, just autoing him down, trying to get all the crits that I can. Trying to, again, use my Q to get the AoE. Again, there's the E to move backwards. There's the auto attack to finish off Renekton. Now just kiting backwards, turning around to use my Q, get knocked up, get ulted by the opponent Yasuo, but that's okay. Now using, again, my E to kite backwards. There's a nice EQ to get the double kill. And now working on Shaco. Going to easily probably get this kill right here. Getting a nice shield right there from my flow, actually. And there was the quad right there. So pretty nice little team fight sequence. Able to pick up a lot of kills. But so like I was saying, I think Bilgewater is a nice first buy. The lifesteal and the attack damage, it really helps your laning. Whereas Static Shiv doesn't really help you very much until you've completed it. Like specifically the what is it? The 800 gold item that gives you the gold per 5. I'm forgetting what it's called. But that item is actually really weak in lane. Like, you're spending 800 gold for 10% crit and the GP5. Like, 10% crit is very weak compared to, like, if you picked up a Chain Vest or a Giant's Belt. Those things actually give you real combat stats or real sustain or something that actually really helps you. Whereas I feel like, the Static Shiv components don't really do anything to help you out. Getting a double kill right there, actually, and I think I am going to end up going down right there. Yes, I am, but not going down without a fight, for sure. But, so like I said, I think that going Bilgewater is going to help out your early laning, because I did feel like his early laning is pretty weak, just because he doesn't really have any damage until he gets crit chance. Then going into Static Shiv, and then I went for Infinity Edge, because I was really big. I got some early kills, up to 15 kills now. But because I was so strong, I went for Infinity Edge. If I was weaker, I probably would have gone with a defensive option there. So, like, let's say you have Bilgewater, Static Shiv, and then maybe go to, like, Sunfire Cape or Randuin's Omen, or maybe even Spirit Visage if you're against an AP. I think mixing in a defensive item kind of in the mid-game is not a bad option. Yasuo is... I don't think he's the type of melee carry where you're going to want to go straight glass cannon. So, like, when I say straight glass cannon, I'm talking about, like the full 80 carry style build where you're getting, like, Infinity Edge, Phantom Dancer, Last Whisper, Bloodthirster, and then maybe, like, a Guardian Angel for your one defensive item. But I think on Yasuo, you kind of want to do... Probably your 3 core offensive items are going to be Static Shiv, Infinity Edge, and then Last Whisper. And the Bilgewater Cutlass is kind of optional. I kind of wanted to mess around with it, but I think if you really wanted to go for an optimal, ideal build, I would do Static Shiv, in Infinity Edge, and then maybe like Randuin's, and then Last Whisper, and then like another defensive item like a Spirit Visage or a Guardian Angel. I think 2 defensive items is the way to go on Yasuo, pretty much solely because you get the double crit chance. So with those 3 core offensive items, you're getting almost 100% crit and attack speed. You're getting everything you want right there, so you don't need another offensive item. So going for another defensive item, I think, is the best choice. They're getting the nice knockup on Shaco. Somehow he actually gets away. That's pretty crazy. But so anyway, in terms of itemization, I'm still kind of messing around with things, but I do think Static Shiv is really core, and then comparing that with Infinity Edge is a really, really powerful combo, because that gets you near 100% crit chance. It gives you a nice chunk of AD and attack speed, pretty much everything you need except armor pen. And then going for some defensive options outside of that, I think, is really the way to go in terms of itemization. But time will tell. I also would really like to try Trinity Force on Yasuo because he has such low cooldowns that he could probably very consistently proc the Spellblade. And it gives you a nice mixture of stats. Really, the only one that would go to waste is the mana. But other than that, everything he can pretty much use because the AP would work with on his E. So I think Trinity Force is not a bad option. And the move speed also is really good from the Rage. But Trinity Force would be more of like if you're going Trinity Force, that's like the core focus of your build. Like pairing Trinity Force with Infinity Edge usually isn't like the best way to do those items. So I guess just in my, I don't know, I don't know exactly how I would do the Trinity Force build entirely. It would just be something I kind of would want to experiment with. Because I think hypothetically it could be really strong because, like I said, he has low cooldowns. He can almost always proc the Spellblade passive between his E and his Q. But overall, I think he's a lot of fun. Very high skill cap, very hard to play, but very rewarding when you landed everything correctly. Like his knock up on his Q and his E, and like it just makes for like a very dynamic gameplay style in your wind wall. Also, like these skills are hard to use, but they're also very strong if used correctly. So this is kind of my first impressions on Yasuo and each of his abilities and his itemization. I think he's a fun champ and really fun to play, but definitely time will tell, and I'm looking forward to kind of really getting to know his nuts and bolts and doing the full Y-buy, so keep an eye out on that in the next couple of weeks. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts on Yasuo on day 1, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.